Welcome to Season 3 of the Strange, Rare, and Peculiar podcast, a place where we explore the past, present, and future of homeopathy from the perspective of a couple of insiders who have been around the homeo block a couple of times.
Homeo block? Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon.
Good tea time.
Oh, yes, tea
It's
time.
tea time.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Naughty Vicar and Assam.
Here we are with the Naughty Vicar.
Here we are. Season 3. This is our first episode of Season 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting.
It is really exciting, and I reckon that we've got a bit of catch-up to do. We have
Catching up, like bringing people up to speed, not the condiment.
So it's 2025.
It is.
And we had our first enrollment event of the year.
Oh my gosh. It's that season. It's the time of the year where we start talking to incoming potential students, and it's amazing. Actually, somebody asked the best question ever last night. I was thinking about this morning when I was doing my morning routines.
Yeah, tell me.
So a woman said, what are the soft skills that a homeopath needs? Mm-hmm. Right? Is that how she asked the question?
Yep.
And
do we teach them?
And do we teach them? And there are so many ways to consider that question. You talk about that a lot, Al, about sort of the attributes of a good homeopath, like curiosity. And, you know, I often talk about the capacity for critical thinking and so forth.
Empathy.
Empathy, of course.
Neutrality.
Mm-hmm. But
inquisitiveness.
And I think those...
Courage.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Love of people.
Well, I'm not so sure about that part.
Well, you can't. Once I had a student, a naturopathic student, and I don't know what the class was, but the naturopathic student said, with exasperation, "But I don't like people." And I thought, and she heard herself.
Yeah. And
I heard her, and I didn't say anything about it.
Yeah.
She withdrew 2 weeks later.
Because it would be hard to sit in the face of another person's suffering if you find people just as a species to be problematic.
Annoying.
People can be annoying, but sometimes they're annoying because they're suffering. You're looking at me like, well, you're annoying. I get that. Anyway, but I had this thought about how, yeah, we can think of all those qualities and attributes, and a lot of it is based on the perception we have of what a homeopath does in the 21st century, especially in places like America where, and many of the English-speaking countries where they sit for very long consultations, an hour, 2 hours, or I've heard tale of people who sit for 2, 3, 4, 5, 11 hours, 3 days, whatever. I would definitely not like people if I had to sit for 3 days trying to get a case.
Yeah. I
think that would be tough. But I think that there is another way to have this conversation. We did last night, and I've been chewing on it, and I thought we could talk about it a bit. And so what we came to was that in this place where we are in the kind of evolution of homeopathy, this is a nice topic for opening a new season also. Anyway, I digress. But in this place where we are very likely at a point in history where the demand for an alternative to the standard of care is being demanded by by sick people for lots and lots of reasons. I don't want to aloe bash by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like there are aspects of the medical system that are struggling, especially when it comes to dealing with people who have sort of long-term chronic illnesses. I'm really happy that we have, emergency rooms, and, having needed emergency care myself, 3 years ago, I'm really happy that even though I'm still cleaning out my body from the, the IV antibiotics that were needed, I do still have all my toes. And so that was right? I mean, I consider it a win, but I think that we're sort of at this point in time where we have to start having different conversations about health and well-being. There are so many conversations, the economics of the delivery of the current healthcare paradigm, the long-term effects of immunosuppressant drugs, more than a century of using antibiotics followed by, antivirals and antifungals, and what that does to sort of the symbiotic relationship between a person and their environment, which then dictates the capacity for health. Hence my saying that I'm still dealing with, the downstream effects of having, needed antibiotics. Does that all make sense?
No, it makes no sense at all. Call me conservative, but how does that relate to the question yesterday about the soft skills required as a homeopath?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
All right.
Well, let's go.
Well, because I'm getting all heated up over here. I think when we talk about the soft skills, I think we see it from this perspective of somebody who sits for 2 hours with a client and delivers a sort of this active listening experience that borders on, I think, for many people's practice, psychotherapy. There are people who have a whole spiritual part of their practice and all this business. But at the end of the day, that's not necessary for practicing really good homeopathy. And that means that for people that are like, I could never sit for 2 hours with a client, well, that doesn't mean that there's no place for them in delivering care. Not every consultation has to take all of that time. What do you think about that? I mean,
I'm still not quite sure the direction you're going, because for me, I think the skills, knowledge and attributes, qualities of a homeopath are pretty clear. Actually pretty clear, even in changing times.
Yeah.
I think, and so to the question, what are those skills? I think we've kind of named them. There'll be some others, I'm sure. But I don't know that they're actually that changing. I mean, Hahnemann wasn't a lovely guy.
Right.
He was, a grumpy German doctor.
Sorry, Sam.
Yeah, I know. And so being a nice person is not a requirement.
Exactly.
It's really interesting.
But
he was meticulous.
Yes.
And he was an information manager. And he had the same challenge that we all have, but in totally different times. He had too much information to deal with. We have way too much information to deal with.
Oh my gosh.
And so a critical skill of a modern homeopath is to manage information really well digitally. Yeah.
We have so at AHE, so if you're new to our podcast, we run a school, Academy of Homeopathy Education. We have foundation, HOHM Foundation. You can find out more about us in the show notes, blah, blah, blah. Anyway,
click and subscribe.
Right. One of the things that we try to do, other than try not to be ridiculous, is we're really working on sort of how can we, with the tools that we have available to us in teaching people to be really excellent homeopaths, how can we sort of work toward changing the existing paradigm? And I think part of the way is through, educating people about what homeopathy is, how it works, training people to be able to deliver the service and all of that.
But back to the question, I think the question that is being asked is, how do you teach those soft skills? Are they inherent or can they be taught?
But I'm saying
I can teach someone how to use a repertory.
Yep.
But I can't teach someone compassion. I don't think I can teach someone to be neutral.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, neutrality is interesting. But in terms of soft skills, in this educational system that we've set up and in the ways that we're doing our best to sort of get others on board with raising the bar, for the delivery of education and accountability and outcomes, yada, yada, yada. There are a list of competencies that have been developed by ACHINA, the accrediting body, and those competencies were part of this long-term project, the Standard and Competencies Review, right? So there was all this community input, and one of the competencies that got some pushback was it 31 about information? I think they didn't even choose it. They didn't even accept it, right?
Information what?
Information management or digital literacy.
No, it made it in.
It did make it in. Digital literacy.
It just didn't like the way I express it.
But it is really interesting and important, this idea that homeopaths do have to have analytical skills and do need to be digitally literate. Remember when we were in Rome and we went to the Homeopathic Society? There was that it's like a museum sort of where the artifacts are, and we got to see I have a picture of it. I should post it on on social media or send it to Sherry. This is so cool. It's what I think it is Hahnemann's first but move toward what we would now call a repertory. It was like an index. Remember
the torn pages.
And it was like in a big poster. It was on the wall. Not a poster, but like it was a big, right?
The way I tell that story, I mean, I ham it up a little bit. But see, what happened is that Sam was having a problem. And so he got his phone and he called his publisher of Materia Medica Pura 1811. They said,
I love the phone, 1811 phone. That's good.
Hello, mate.
Hello, mate.
Got a problem. Can you send me a copy of my book, please? And it arrived in the mail, Amazon. And he immediately cut out the pages from the spine, and then he tore every line of every page or every symptom on every page.
Yep.
And then he reordered them.
Yeah.
And then he pasted them using sellotape, which didn't exist, but glue. He glued them.
Yeah.
And that is the beginning. I believe is it the lexicon? I think it's the lexicon.
The lexicon.
I think it's the...
Did he do it with Materia Medica Pura, not Fragmenta? Well, it was 1811.
Well, his first... That's a great question.
That's a question for Peter Morrill. He's come up twice in 2 days.
There you go.
I need to send him a note.
Anyway, that's what happened. That's the first repertory. He never published it. That's why he got Clemens Maria von Berninghausen on the job.
Exactly. And now it's hanging in the Italian play. Is it at Piazza Navona? Mm-hmm. Anyway, but I think information management and those skills I think they're really important because I'm going to keep going with this because part of this is that I am in absolute heaven reading Andre Sain's 2-volume tome, Lessons in Pure Homeopathy about Adolphus Lippe. And Lippe. Adolph.
Not Adolphus.
I think I've seen it as Adolphus. Is it just Adolph? Is on his grave? It's just Adolph, isn't it?
Adolph.
Yeah.
Adolph.
I stand corrected. I sit corrected, technically. But I'm a super fan. And one of the things that's really stood out to me, because I'm working on my case analysis book, and in doing so, I'm writing my case analysis book, and I'd put it aside for a few years while I was in grad school and writing my dissertation, which of course was about 19th century homeopathy, and so I got really deep into how they analyzed cases, which looks nothing like what we do today, nothing at all. There is such an emphasis on aphorism 153. I mean, so many prescriptions are on that standout, most characteristic symptom.
What's characteristic?
But even most there are so many, and of course, this I'm talking about through journals, cases that have been published in journals and conference proceedings and so forth. And yeah, it's really interesting the ways in which that that is so important, and that's kind of like what has happened with the I think a lot of folks sort of loving the Benninghausen way of analyzing a case, which is, it's kind of one step beyond that sort of simplistic, just looking at the symptoms that are presented in a remedy, because it's more about building out a symptom, right? So it's information management, isn't it? It's the utilization of information. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I would describe it as you gather the information and you gather it with something in mind. You're gathering it for completeness. You're trying to, you go through the presenting complaint and then you modify that complaint. And then...
Explain what that means for the people.
Well, for the people...
For the people.
Automatic for the people is that it's often said in homeopathy that the name of the condition is useless.
Yeah.
And we're not interested. Well, that's not quite true, because we are definitely interested, but it's the portal. So if someone has psoriasis, it's only relevant for a homeopath if that psoriasis is modified. And it's modified with the components of a complete symptom.
Right.
So a complete symptom is it's a finding. You know,
Yeah.
you find the modalities, the concomitants, the location.
In other words, when
The
just
cause.
for people who are listening who might not be familiar with some of these terms, like the modalities are the aspects of someone's suffering that show what makes something better or worse. Are they better from lying down, or are they worse from a hot application? Because I think often of a modality as like the core modifier.
Well, then you've got something else, which is that hierarchically,
Yeah.
the modalities are more important, and the concomitants are more important
Totally.
than the location itself.
Yeah, concomitants being two things happening at the same time. Someone has a pain in their, liver, and they have diarrhea. Those would be concomitant complaints. And the point that Al just made about how the location is the least important. I mean, that's one of the things that we talk a lot about in first semester.
Still important, but
it is
hierarchically slightly lesser.
Because it might be important, it might not. If you're talking about someone having abdominal pain, the quadrant of the abdomen it's in would be indicative of the internal organ. But if they step on a rusty nail on their left foot, it doesn't matter if it was the left foot or the right foot.
If you got a rash on your wrist,
yeah,
it doesn't matter if it's on your elbow or on your wrist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although the question might be how you could always ask another question like, well, is it in a place that's uncovered or a place that is covered, right? So you can always explore to get more information.
How have we gone into this corner of case analysis or evaluation and classification of symptoms, though?
Well, no, that was just because we were talking about Benninghausen and how in the early days of homeopathy, the ask wasn't sit with me for 2 hours and let me explore everything let me analyze your life. And so the point that I wanted to make is that sometimes I think there is a nervousness around becoming a homeopath because of the perception of what a homeopath does. And while this isn't exactly can you teach the soft skills, I think you have to teach active listening.
Would you say that I'm a nice person?
Now, why would you ask me that question?
Well, good. There you go.
Because I could answer that question from many perspectives.
Good. But you see, I think I've got a bunch of soft skills.
You totally do.
Yeah.
But if you're really hungry and you're at a restaurant and your chicken takes too long... Anyway, I digress. It's good you gave up espresso.
But that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, actually.
Yeah. That's been good for humanity.
So I had this experience once where there's two parts of the story, just real quick.
Mm-hmm.
A guy came to see me, a lawyer in his late 50s. Mm-hmm. He'd recently got married to a 37-year-old woman.
Oh, I know this story.
And he was unable to perform his conjugal duties. Mm. And he'd had some allopathic intervention that was a little weird. They put him on testosterone, which wasn't the problem, because he wasn't able to maintain and sustain his erection. Mm-hmm. And his prostate was the size of a grapefruit. Mm-hmm. And that'll do for the story. There's a few other bits and pieces. But the thing is, I took the case, gathered the information, gave him Agnes Castus. In 2 weeks... his wife was pregnant, put it that way.
Yeah.
Like successful treatment.
I named the baby Alastair. Or grapefruit. Agnes?
Agnes. Agnes.
Yeah.
Middle name Castus.
I like it.
12C.
Yeah.
Might have been 12X, can't remember. Doesn't matter. But anyway, years later, I was having a chat with my mate, Ken. You
haven't talked about him in a while on this podcast.
So he's a lovely man. And he was, we used to drink a lot of wine. He was a big fan of the Australian Pinot Noir. Mm. And he said, recently I got a client of yours. And I'm going, that's interesting because, I tend to take clients with me wherever I went. And I said, who was it? And he said, I said that to the client. It's like, why aren't you seeing Alastair? And the client said, he's a nice bloke, but he spends too much time with his head in the computer. Mm-hmm. For me.
Yeah.
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 And I thought to myself, gee, okay, that's good to know. Really good to hear.
Yeah.
And so, we've got room enough in this profession for all sorts.
That's the point I was trying to make.
Well, I got there. Well, you weren't going to get there today.
I totally was going to get there. Okay, today being the operative word. No, but that's the thing, is that I think there is this perception of sort of, sitting there with a cup of tea for hours and hours and having this sort of psychological perspective on a person when in reality it's
Well, you think about it, Heine Fry.
oh, the nicest man I've ever
Oh,
met.
nicest man, but he's seeing 40 clients, or he was seeing 40
Yep.
kids, autistic kids a day.
Yeah, no, ADD, ADHD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that, sorry.
It may be both. If you don't know, Heiner Fry is, he's a pediatrician. He's from, where the heck's he from?
Austria. Geez, forgive me if I get that wrong. I think he's Austrian.
Oh, see,
Swiss or Germany.
Oh, gosh.
One of the three.
I was going to say Belgium. So we
No,
clearly don't know where
no.
he's from.
No.
Okay. Anyway, and he, so he is the person who put out the polarity analysis. It's been around for a long time. People love it. Anyway, we got to sit with him at, we were all at the same table in Scotland at the Faculty of Homeopathy 100th Congress back in November. And I honestly have not met a nicer person.
The point that I was going to make
Sorry,
is that when you're seeing 40 people a day,
Yeah.
you haven't got time to be nice.
Yes, you do.
You've got to get that. Well, you can look. You've got to get the job done.
Yeah.
Tell me, you've got to gather the symptoms. You've got to do the analysis. You've got to, have those systems in place to get the client out the door. The only reason I brought him up is that he's not spending 2 hours with a case.
Exactly. You can't if you're seeing 40 clients. Oh, when I was working at the outreach clinic, take easily 15 cases in a day.
Yeah.
In Tanzania, Jeremy and Camilla and Tina, how many cases are they seeing in a day? Could be, dozens. And so learning how to do the job and really kind of getting to the point, what is going on, that's what is so important.
Now, what I want to do is bring it back to the question that you asked, because the question happened in our first enrollment event of the year.
It did.
All
indeed.
right, and it was great, a lovely event. Our Zoom room was full of eclectic folks.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing.
All sorts of different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so we're underway, you know. Can I also take it in a different direction as well? Because we're beginning our academic year. We just had an end of the first week of teaching, first enrollment event. But I want to tell you about my winter break.
Okay.
So you mentioned the term characteristic symptom.
Yeah.
I've written a book. It's called Characteristics. That's the name of the book. Unless there's a really, really good reason that isn't going to work. That's the name of the book. Now, over the years, I've been involved in many, many, many provings. And many of those provings, all of those provings, I've published the raw data, the primary data. And I remember wanting to do this thing, and then, 2006, it went down the list, and 2008, it was down the list, and 2015, it was down the list. And then suddenly this winter, it popped its head up. Yeah. And so what I've done, I was always smitten with Vermeulen's Concordant Materia Medica. Yeah. And, the reason I loved it is because the way it was laid out. Yeah. And it was just clear. And you had a remedy that in the proving would have been 50 pages condensed to, say, 4, maybe 5.
Right. In very small print.
In very small print, but on good quality, high quality Bible paper.
Best.
So that's what I've done.
Yeah.
So I've created what I used to call concordant-like chapters on all of the provings that I've been involved in over the years.
I'm really excited about that.
I'm really excited too. Yeah. I've put in a quick commentary, an image, and then just here's the data. Only proving data, so it's still a primary resource. Yeah. And then, and so there's 15 of those individually, but also compiled into one book. Yep. Which I'm quite proud of. It'll come out soon. And then I am now 3/4 of the way through going even further and creating the keynotes of those.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for this. It's really, really, really important. And let's just tell it. We're gonna have a live homeopathy retreat in June. So mark your calendars. It's going to take place here in Philadelphia, the birthplace of American homeopathy.
Beginning of June.
The beginning of June. So it's going to be the graduation, AHE graduation on the 1st of June, which is a Sunday. And then the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, will be the retreat. And then on Thursday night, there's going to be a gala. It's going to be a fundraising gala for HOHM Foundation, but it's also going to be wicked fun. There's going to be dancing and all sorts.
Homeopaths dancing.
If you've never seen homeopaths dancing, like honestly, I think you go for that. You just go to see. I remember I told you about that woman who said to me at the Joint American Conference last year. She goes, "Oh, you've got rhythm." She says, "When I'm watching when I'm watching a lot of homeopaths dance," she says, it's like they all have their own individual music playing in their head.
Well, you have been a professional dancer.
I mean, I've got some skin in the game there. Anyway, but we are excited to have this event for so many reasons. One of which is that it's really nice to see people live. Since we've got lots of people who travel to come to graduations, it's an excuse to keep people staying on. There's a lot to see in the homeopathy world here in Philadelphia, so there are going to be some events.
It's a beautiful time of the year.
It is the best time of the year to be in Philadelphia. Yeah. The flowers, the flowering trees. I mean, it's a really beautiful time.
Our garden.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a way also for people who have either have come to AHE or who haven't come to AHE, who want to level up their practice. So we're putting together an event that is going to be, so the retreat is, we decided to call it a retreat and not a seminar because we want it to be something that's super restorative for people. So, recognizing that one of the jobs in the homeopathies, in the homeopaths, gosh, I can't.
Homeopathies?
I don't know what happened there.
What did you mean to say?
Homeopaths.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things that we need to do in our job is assess obstacles to cure. What are the ways in which lifestyle might be affecting a person? And the best way to sort of get in touch with that is to do it within ourselves. And so there's going to be amazing food. There'll be nature walks. There'll be yoga. It's a really intentionally designed experience for people to really come to be in community together and to learn. So Al's going to be teaching from these provings that he has done. And I'm going to be teaching on potency, posology, case management. So we really thought about what are the things
the Great Posology Summit.
Exactly. What are the questions we were thinking about? What are the things that come up in conversation a lot when we're talking with our colleagues? What are the things that students struggle with in practice? And even last night, for example, we had a posology roundtable for all of the clinical supervisors that work with AHE in the acute and chronic clinics so that we could all be on the same page, making sure that we're all sort of, understanding sort of the foundations of the delivery of the remedies and how we kind of manage that over time. And it feels like something that we all, you can never talk about it too much. So all are invited. If you're interested, get in touch with us. We're going to start getting the list together. We will have all of the details out really soon, actually. Really soon. We're waiting on one detail.
It's incredibly exciting.
Don't you think?
I totally do.
I know.
I'm a little less excited. No, I'm totally excited about it, actually. Let's say those three events, graduation, the retreat.
Yep.
And the gala.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be good.
I just had a little flash of Jeff Johnson dancing.
Oh my gosh.
Damn. I don't even know how to describe that.
Well, first tell people who he is.
Well, Jeff is a ex-rugby playing giant.
He's got to be 6'5".
Oh, yeah.
Easily.
4.
4?
6'4", maybe shrinking. And he's a brilliant Somerset vet.
Oh, yes.
And he is loveliest man.
He really is. And to see him dancing with just pure joy and abandon. He and M. Colley, another homeopath, M, who's going to do, we're having a book club for M's recently published book, The Joy of Homeopathy, which is going to be super exciting. Anyway, the two of them dancing at the event, at the gala, at the Faculty of Homeopathy, I think was one of the highlights of my last year. And it's the pure joy and abandon. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that you mentioned them. Anyway, we're going to do.
So that's coming up.
It is.
Yeah.
June.
Really exciting. So we're in January now. So we've got to get through the rest of the academic year.
Yep.
And and can I mention two other things which happened at the end of 2024 that might have slipped through some cracks. The first is that our research office
yes.
has had two really cool publications land.
Yeah.
And because they've landed in peer-reviewed journals, that might not make any splash in, say, conventional homeopathic circles if you're not reading peer-reviewed journals.
Yeah.
And I say that because we've not published them in homeopathy journals. The first is an evaluation of who is coming to see the homeopath in contemporary times. And it's an analysis of intake forms using a very nice statistical methodology. And it's been published in OBM, Integrative and Complementary Medicine. Right? So it's an integrative medicine, complementary medicine journal.
Yep.
It's got a nice, chunky impact factor. They put us through the middle, actually. I had to go back and forth a few times.
Sure.
And in the end, it's a solid publication. And it says...
Give me a high five.
Yes.
Yes.
And what it says is, times are changing. Essentially, times are changing. And now we have evidence of the psychographic and the demographic, some of the attributes of and perceptions of people that are choosing homeopathy. Mm-hmm. We've been able to make some tentative conclusions about how that's changing over time.
Right.
But above all, it's a call to action, because what we've done is just our own clinic.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of observational. Mm-hmm. But now what we need is, let's get 50 cases, 200 cases. Recently, a tranche of information came. 21 cases just landed in the through the portal from our PGRN, the Practitioner Generated Research Network. And now the job for us is to say, okay, well, we did the initial work, and now this is what we're finding when we're evaluating and analysing all of the information that's coming towards us. So
exciting.
Isn't that?
It is. I mean, it's beyond. It's really funny. This is, sometimes like you say the things that are really heavy on your heart, I know, I feel, but I think it's hard. You mentioned how, publishing outside of homeopathy, publishing in journals outside of it, it's hard sometimes because we want to communicate with the people who are in the world of homeopathy. And I feel like there's so much to be done for us to be outward facing. But the sort of little insular world in homeopathy can be very much about people who are sort of, making it up as they go along. There's a lot of, the intuitive this and the, the spiritual that and that the hard, the sort of nuts and bolts hard work about how we really can institute change gets overlooked and doesn't get, like it's not as sexy as, I can make people levitate in my, whatever. Right. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, no, I think there's a gap. There's a couple of gaps, because the way I would describe it is, we have industry or trade journals, and then we've got peer-reviewed journals. Yeah. But there's really, really only one peer-reviewed journal relating to homeopathy. Yeah. And, it's behind a paywall. It's behind a paywall. Okay. Oh, no, well, okay, you're right, actually, because the International Journal of High Dilutions Research, is there. It doesn't have an impact factor, though, I don't think. But nevertheless, there's those two journals that really only are publishing good, robust research into homeopathy. And the rest, is HPathy, is, in similum I think it might be Similimum or Similia
Yeah.
in Australia. And these are more trade journals that are really happy to publish what arrives, what comes in front of them with a couple of variations.
Which is nice, right? That we have a way to see what people are doing.
I think there used to be so many more. Do you remember? There's the NASH journal, there's the Society of Homeopaths journal, there's the Homeopathy in Practice journal. These seem to be a little less busy than in the past. I wonder if there's less decent quality articles coming towards them.
No.
But that point that you make is somewhat it's important for us, because we've got to make sure that we don't lose the community. When we say, and folks, one of the reasons that I chose to publish that particular paper about homeopathy in an integrative medicine journal is because of the readership. The readership's broader, wider. Right. And it means that we're not always singing to ourselves.
Well, that's the thing.
But we can't lose contact with ourselves either.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. Do the second thing, and then we got to wrap this up. What
do you mean?
These people don't have all day.
Getting a groove up here. The second article...
Get another cup of tea, people. Here he goes.
Relates...
Yeah, right there. You got something in your eye?
Yeah, to the 3,941 cases that we have of COVID.
Yeah.
And this was also not published in a homeopathy journal. It was published in a journal called Healthcare.
Yeah.
Which also has a decent chunky impact factor. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And again, we went in that direction because there was a journal, a publication devoted to what do we now know on reflection 5 years or 4 years after the pandemic.
Which is hugely important, because if we are to get in the game, get in the action, and not just, work in our little silos, we have to have the decision makers in public health, in insurance, in the medical systems, in the hospital systems, understanding that homeopathy is a viable resource. And so when we get our message out into the broader, into the broader literature, then when a problem comes along and somebody says, you remember that article about, what is it called? Homeopathy? Was that what it was? And then next thing you know, right? And I think about this because, think about the movie, Kim Alea's movie, the... Introducing homeopathy, right? So, Kim is fond of saying, look, when this movie gets out there, it's going to be seen by, millions of people, blah, blah, blah. Then there's going to be increased demand for our, for the services. Well, we need to be ready. You know what I mean? We need to have sort of the infrastructure and everything. And as we get to the end, I'm savoring this thousands of pages of the Lippy book. I think it's got to be 2,000 pages. The first volume is 800.
Yeah, just before you get there, though, can I just mention the details?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oh, sure, of course. Sorry.
Yeah. So, we did speak to an extent about our findings, our results. We know how well our clients did. All of those clients did over that period of time. So there's discussion about our outcomes. But really, the discussion is about our epidemic readiness. And the point being made in our article was that at a time where medicine was running around like a headless chicken, orthodox medicine, when there were tests were so poor, when political decisions were being made above public health decisions, and then when public health decisions were driving in other parts of the world decision making, which had all sorts of other consequences, flow-on effects, the homeopaths were just at work. You, in particular, were just at work, and the team around you. The point that I'm making is that through a non-hierarchical team, a model of working, we were able to fill the gap, and we filled it really effectively. And we've done that in other epidemic situations around the world at other times. Sure. Right?
Yep.
And so...
But going back to the use of technology and information management, the thing that we were able to do was take those hard skills, right? And say from the outset, we are going to not just deliver exceptional care, but we're going to collect all of that data. We're going to be really clear about the questions that we're asking from a research standpoint, right? Demographic, psychographic, and public health and epidemiological information, and then we're going to publish it in places that are not just speaking to our own ecosystem.
Yeah. So boom, that one landed.
Boom. I'm so excited. Give me another high five.
There you go.
Good on you, mate.
All right.
So as we draw to a close here, because, these people got things to do.
All right.
They're sitting in their cars. They pulled over saying, okay, it's like the NPR driveway moment. I need to go in, but Alastair, so exciting. How could I leave? But thinking about this as we prepare for, as all the schools are preparing for the next academic year, I guess I feel like most of us do the September through June thing. Anyway, but there's, I think a lot about how homeopathy was so at the forefront of American medicine. And I think living in Philadelphia, for all of my life, there was the sign Hahnemann on the side of a hospital until 2 years ago, right?
We're going to find those letters.
We're going to find those letters. But that we had an opportunity and it wasn't the right time. And I feel like now is the right time. And I want us all to really think about how we can make it happen. So I'm going to read from just a paragraph. This is Andre Sain's voice. This is not Lippe. There's some quotes in here anyway, but he says, as a member of the old guard, Lippe witnessed during the 5 decades of his career the extraordinary ascendancy and popularity of homeopathy, the advent of misrepresentations, and the deterioration of homeopathic offerings, which preceded its great decline. What almost wiped homeopathy entirely off the map was the false teachings that were dispensed in colleges and dispersed through professed homeopathic journals and books. The great decline began when professed teachers of homeopathy started to steer away from the teachings of Hahnemann, and most remained silent about it. The commonality of those misrepresenting homeopathy throughout history is that they adopt the name homeopathy, but not its principles and rules of practice. Anyway, and I think, and then he just goes on, he quotes Lippe, who says, a characteristic peculiarity of all and every one of these pretenders is that they pretend to be wiser than was that extraordinary philosopher and good man, Samuel Hahnemann. And, I feel like may none of us profess to be wiser. Let's just, this guy, he did it. He was able to create a system of medicine that reflected the laws of the universe and put it into practice and gave us all the information we need. We don't need to pretend to be smarter and wiser. We just need to be diligent in the study of what is in front of us. And when we do that, we can make great change, right? And also, I love something that you just said about how when we created the Homeopathy Help Network, it was a non-hierarchical infrastructure. And I think that's really important. I think there's a bit of guru culture in in homeopathy teaching, and we don't need that. Hahnemann just was a person who said, look, people, I put this all in order. It's all right there. So we don't need to be gurus. We just need to be translators. We need to be, the people who've been around a while and have studied, then we deliver it to the next generation, who delivers it to the next generation, right? With fidelity to the system. So as we start our 3rd season of the podcast, and as we get ready to take on new students, I wanted to just do some intention setting. That's
what?
Yes. I like all that stuff.
Okay.
So we did it. That's it.
All right. Love it.
Me too.
See you, folks.
All right. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Early enrollment is underway at the Academy of Homeopathy Education. AHE is the first and only program in the U.S. to offer a full-time pathway. Enroll for fall 2025 by April 30th and save up to $500 on tuition. Contact admissions today at ahe.online. The Academy of Homeopathy Education provides various pathways through our program depending on your desired outcome. Our acute care homeopathy programs cater to students and medical professionals who aspire to use homeopathy in an acute care setting. We also offer introductory, professional, clinical training, and postgraduate programs. You can learn more at ahe.online.